Hello, folks. It's past, and thank you very much for joining. Thank you for giving up some of your time today to listen to what's been happening at Appello since we held our last one of these updates. Mostly, as you have seen from the invitation, this is a customer event, but we recognize there are a few people who've joined who are still equally keen and eager to learn what's been happening within Appello and some of our latest news. So we welcome you all as well. Ian, before we open the presentation, I think we should all quickly introduce ourselves. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tim, I'm the CEO of Appello, and I had the privilege of being here 4 years and a month and a little bit, all of which has been, no, not all of which, that would be a lie, almost all of which has been an absolute joy. It's certainly been a privilege to work in such an organization that is so committed to making a difference for their customers. And I've joined on today's call by a few colleagues. So Mark, why don't you go first?
Hi everyone, I'm Mark, I'm the Commercial Director at Appello and I've been here just over a year now.
And Jill?
Hi everyone, I'm Jill, I'm the Monitoring Services Director and I'm the longest standing member of the team today. I've been here 14 years.
And hi all, I'm Ian Hockings, Head Marketing at Appello. I'll be monitoring the questions, so if you want to use the chat facility that you'll see at the bottom of your screen, we'll be doing Q&A session following the presentation.
And on the subject of the presentation, Ian, why don't you put the slides up for us, please? Folks, I guess every single one of you is more than familiar with Zoom and its functionality. I'm sure you've spent, as some of us have, a lot of time on video over the course of the last 12 months. Teams is our mechanism of choice usually internally, but we use Zoom for external audiences, as most people are familiar with it. Hopefully you're familiar with the functionality. It's very simple to ask questions and do that through the Q&A section. You can also make observations if you've got particular comments you want everybody to see through the chat icons at the bottom, so or it may be across the top depending on how you've got your screen configured. Please feel free to ask questions as you go through. We'll handle all of those at the end, and we want to make this as informative and useful for you as possible. So we very much look forward to filling you in on where we're headed. In terms of the agenda, relatively simple overview of the big headlines since we last spoke. Jill is on because she wanted to, and we felt it would be helpful to talk about some of the learnings we've had, the experiences we've had in monitoring over the weeks and months and what is now knocking on the door of a year that COVID has blighted the UK. We're going to touch on some case studies which we've done both in terms of digital smart living solutions and digital bridge. And we're going to introduce a new product at a relatively high level, which is due in the summer of this year. And then we'll touch very quickly on the government's white paper and some observations about that before turning over to your questions. So Ian, let's move on to the first of our slides, the headlines. A few things worth calling out. Some of these will mean something to you perhaps, and some will mean a lot to everybody, but let me just explain them in a little bit more detail. One of the first things that's worth mentioning is that our Appello SBR, and that stands for Single Best Record capability, has been moved into Microsoft's Azure platform for greater scalability. Now, that all sounds like a bit technology gobbledygook, but what that means in real terms is that we've got now more capacity than ever to be able to provide licenses for our web SBR application. And how our customers use this, if you're not already a user, is house managers, area managers, having access to records on the move or on site from the monitoring database. So this can, for example, tell you what calls have happened overnight, whether it can give you the opportunity to update a resident record in real time and make sure that that's loaded directly into the monitoring centre's records. Of course, all of this is entirely secure. It's in a hosted, cyber secure environment. Microsoft, as you know a thing or two about that. And as we're really proud with the customer feedback we've had about just what a difference it makes to productivity for housing providers and the confidence and reassurance of their customers that the very latest records, next of kin details, whatever it may be, are captured in our CareNet platform. And on the subject of CareNet, so we've introduced a CareNet as a platform capability. So without doubt, it is proven to be the most digitally connected telecare platform in the country by some miles. We've handled several million digital telecare calls, which is more than I would be prepared to put a decent amount of money on this, which is more than all of the other monitoring centres in the UK have handled in terms of end-to-end digital calls put together. So because of that experience, we felt it was appropriate to bring the service to market for those monitoring providers who wanted to get a more modern, digitally proven platform rather than those that have been in the industry for quite some while. We've already had our first tender win, which is very, very, very encouraging after such a short period after launch. So exciting times ahead, and we look forward to, for those who have an interest in this area, chatting in a lot more detail. We have and we've talked about this before, we've got a really good dispersed alarm called Smart Alert, and we had a major contract win for that during the first part of this year. We're very pleased to be able to continue the headway we've made within communal living environments that we'll talk about a little bit more with our Smart Living Solutions innovation, which has set the benchmark for what a inclusive, safe, well-being focused living experience can look like in retirement properties. We've been proud to work with Essence on the creation, or certainly the launch to the UK of the Smart Alert product, and customer feedback so far is really positive. We look forward to building on that journey. One thing in terms of the digital journey that's worth you being aware of is that Openreach, who have previously, or who have responsibility for running the analog to digital migration program, have been busy ramping up their plans to retire the analog network and migrate all services to IP-based, internet protocol-based services. They've published a web portal now that is for not just their customers, but for the general community of telephony providers and telephony service users. So you can find that at the web link that we've posted here, and it's also going to be available as part of the downloads from this session for those who would find latest information from Openreach, the people who are effectively leading that path. So in terms of the next slot, I mentioned earlier that Jill was going to cover some of what's been happening within our monitoring centre in terms of our response to COVID. Jill, tell everybody about the highs and lows, and I know there have been both over the last 12 months or so.
Sure, there have been. So at the start of COVID, back in March last year, we took the decision to distribute laptops to our staff, so to enable them to work from home, particularly for those that were shielding that still wanted to work. We distributed 300 laptops. Everybody in the company was involved in that distribution and delivery. to our staff and to their homes in a safe manner. That has actually really helped us with some of the increase in demand and enabled us to be far more dynamic in how we support our customers and the queues. Some of the challenges that we have seen have been an increase in ACHD, which is average call handling time. We've seen certainly in some of the call dynamics, we've seen an increase in certain types of calls as well, which is also actually taken us down a road of engaging with our housing partners to ask them to support us with reducing some non-essential calls into the monitoring centre and asking them to think a little bit differently about how they are reacting on site when they are on site. So some of the things that we've been working in partnership with our partners is looking at test calls, the requirement for test calls and the volume of test calls. The amount of daily checks that we are doing, and our customers are looking at and have looked at how they can look at more on-site measures to support. The requirement for logging on and off site is another one. And looking at local measures for door and carer access. I have to say that our partners have been fantastic in supporting us through those, and we've come up with actually some solutions that I think will probably continue through and after the COVID pandemic. We also looked at the use of using next of kin as opposed to calling the ambulance as the first port of call. And I know that there's many of our monitoring centre colleagues already do this, but with no speech calls particularly and concern for welfares, when the ambulance were on high REAP levels, we were actually adding to their already stressed service by sending them out to situations where we had no information on them. So we've been working with our families of our service users who have been attending as first port of call to these types of calls, and then feeding back so that we can give the ambulance actual information on the situation, which allows them to categorize the call correctly if that is required. To be fair, 9 out of 10 times there's generally not an emergency required. Some of the other things that we've undertaken is home working engagement. That's been a really key project for us to ensure that our home workers are not feeling isolated, that they're still feeling part of the team. They've got the escalation routes in place to be supported by the team. And our coaches and our shift leaders will do a daily check to all of our home workers every day to ensure that they know who's available, who can support them. And one of the other things we're looking at currently is how we can improve the social element for them. So we've done all the work stuff, which is great, but also they do miss the social interaction with their colleagues, which we're just engaging with them now to think about what we can do differently in that respect. Thank you. Ian, could we go on to the next slide? So as part of all that, we've also been looking at how we can improve our services. It's really important. We're always keeping our finger on the pulse with what's out there and what we can do to better our service, improve the service, both for our staff and for our customers and for our business. So one of the things that we have come across is a noise cancelling software, which is actually being used in contact centres internationally currently. And for us, where we see the massive benefit for it is when we can reduce the noise from our residents' televisions, smoke detectors. And for those of you who are in a monitoring centre, I'm sure will have heard your operators asking their customers to turn their TV down so that they can hear them. So this is where we see the massive benefit in this respect. Our CTO currently is just doing some initial testing, and once that's happened, we will look at how we can pilot that more widely within the contact centre and with our home workers, as that's really important too. And another item that we're looking at is how we can make our outbound calling more intelligent. So we've been looking at some outbound calling software to look at how we can broaden our range of reassurance and befriending calls that we already offer. And we don't stop there. At Appello, we always like to consider what's new and what's happening. And the team are always reviewing every aspect of improvement in Appello. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to Tim.
Thanks, Jill. Certainly, we haven't been resting on our laurels over the last few months or so. What Jill didn't say, and I think it was probably a little too modest to say, is that throughout and despite the COVID pandemic, we've hit all of our service measures every single month consistently against the TSA KPIs, and you know, of course, we consider that a minimum benchmark in terms of the service we deliver, but it is an important benchmark and one that we've been proud to be able to continue to support despite all of the challenges that any monitoring centre has been faced with. When I talk about challenges that monitoring centres are faced with, one of the ones that will be very familiar to everybody on this call, I'm quite sure, is the length of time it takes for a telecare device to actually connect to the monitoring centre. So ignore how long it takes for the monitoring centre to answer it for a second or two. Most telecare devices, unless they're fully end-to-end digital like Smart Living Solutions, will have a 20 to 90 second call setup time. And depending on how old they are and what protocols they're signalling, and depending on what part of their country, the UK they're in, and how much digitalization has taken place of the networks there will be an instance, and you know, the TSA and our own research indicates that this is circa 1 in 10 or so calls on average, and again, as I say, dependent on protocol, dependent on location, that suffer what's called first time call failure. So they don't reach the monitoring centre first time because the protocols time out as they try to traverse the mixture of analog and digital networks that all of the UK telcos currently have. Now, we have built a solution for that, a cloud-based, it's part of our cloud-based portfolio, just as WebSBR, which I mentioned earlier was. We've built a capability, a cloud-based capability to take analog calls, translate them into digital calls, and therefore mitigate the first time call failure. Now, it's important to say that does not overcome all of the shortcomings of analog. It doesn't give you fast connectivity. It doesn't give you multiple lines out from a scheme. It doesn't give you additional functionality. But what it does do is it de-risks the risk to life of a delayed call because of first time call failure. If you think about a call that's already taking 20 to 90 seconds to set up, failing first time and adding at least 1 or 2 more reattempts can be one of the reasons why residents and service users will often complain about a 3, 4, 5 minute delay before it even reaches a monitoring centre. We've been proud to trial in real life scenarios and use the Appello Digital Bridge in real life scenarios. And one of our customers in particular had a particular problem with one very rural area where they had customers, service users who were suffering from a relatively high level of first time call failure, somewhere between 25 and 28%. And through the use of the Appello Digital Bridge, we were delighted to be able to get that down below, well below 1% for them. A massive improvement in customer experience and customer safety. And we are, as a business, we are very, very focused on working with our customers on helping them develop their digital progression so that they can start to deliver more benefits for their end customers. And we've got a great example of that over the next couple of slides, another case study where Housing 21 were entered into and voted one of the top 10 digital housing providers in the UK, and theirs was the only health and well-being focused project to make the top 30. and that focus, that health and wellbeing project, was about how they'd used smart living solutions to enhance the quality of life for their residents. They started on that journey with us back in 2017. There's now over 200 of their sites that we've done to date with smart living solutions, and the feedback from their residents, in common with all of the other residents that where we've installed smart living solutions, is tremendous about how much it has improved their quality of life. Overwhelmingly positive was the phrase that they used to describe both their colleagues and their customers' experience of using it. And of course, it's helped them very, very specifically during COVID. They've seen a significant increase in video calling, both between residents and from residents to staff, whether those staff were on site or off site, helping reduce social isolation, helping improve the feeling of communication. And the future pilots that we're trying to that we're getting off the ground and trying to prove various aspects of different improvements in well-being and quality of life are all underpinned by having this open digital technology which easily integrates into people's lives, which has a really helpful day-to-day improvements like video door entry to make sure that they can see and feel safe about who they're letting in through the doors, but also it creates a platform, as I said, for future well-being innovations, and that's one of the things that we're really excited about. However, we do recognise that not every housing provider has either the remit or the ability to be able to focus on improving the quality of life of their residents. Some have got a mandate, for whatever reason, which is just about replacing existing equipment. And in particular, we're conscious that for some housing providers, the ward and call system is an opportunity to transform living experience. For some, it is a necessity to replace like for like. And so during the summer of this year, we will introduce a new product to help those customers at least be more digitally capable, even if they can't necessarily to the same degree enhance the living experience of their residents. So we've got a short video which we're just going to play you now, and hopefully this will give you a small flavour for it. So still in its early stages of production, we've had the first samples through, and as I said, we're expecting to launch this during the summer of 2021, so later on this year. Smart Connect is very much designed, as I indicated earlier, to sit underneath the Smart Living Solutions portfolio and to answer that need for those who are looking for the essentials of digital technology, rather than for those who are looking to enhance living experience. It's for a connected environment in a end-to-end digital manner, but without the life-enhancing features of video door entry, for example, which have been proven to make such a big impact on the quality of life. We recognise, as I said, though, that not everybody has a mandate or a remit to be able to upgrade that living experience. And as a result of that, Smart Connect sits in our portfolio underneath Smart Living Solutions to be able to fulfil that brief. We've got a little tick sheet to give you some flavour of what it does and what it doesn't do, and also to highlight where Appello Digital Bridge stands in this portfolio of cloud-based services. So one of the things that I think you'll be able to sense straight away is the most important thing for some providers will be just having a digital capability and having that first time call failure risk mitigated. And you can do that with some of the offerings that are out there from the Tunstall's or the Tyne-Techs through one of their hybrid solutions. You can do it in a simple, low-cost, non-intrusive manner through the Appello Digital Bridge. Smart Connect will offer many benefits over and above the typical hybrid solution, and Smart Living Solutions brings that full rounded experience for those, as I say, who want to really maximize the current and future living experience for their residents. So an exciting time for us, and we're looking forward to talking through more of these details at both the TSA conference not next week, but the week after, as well as with customers on a bilateral basis. If you're interested and it would be of any relevance, then we'd be happy to have a conversation. All of the usual functionality that you'd see from a standard Tunstall or a Tyne-Tech, plus the proven digital capability is in the mix, and it will be a price competitive offering. In terms of where we're headed as a business, though, the important thing for Appello is to continue to try and create a platform of services that really help our customers adapt to what is happening now, but what will happen in their customer bases over the months and years ahead. And that's why I thought the government's white paper on health and social care integration was worthy of a little bit of airtime here. Some of you, I'm sure, will have given it a great deal of consideration. Others perhaps have paid it scant regard, but it does have the opportunity to be fairly transformational for our sector over the course of the years ahead. I think we've all seen, I'm sure we've all seen examples where residents, customers could have had a better, more joined up experience if housing, social care and primary care had a really cohesive set of planning and action orientation around individuals. And we've seen many scenarios, both in our own personal lives, if you're anything like me, as well as in our wider work lives, where it's apparent that the best interests of an individual are not necessarily being served because there isn't a clear level of accountability and joined up budgetary thinking between the various providers whom they're so dependent on, whether that's housing, whether that's social care, whether that's primary care, GPs, etc., etc. So we think there were some really telling pieces in the white paper that do point to the right direction of travel, and we'd be interested to hear how you and your organizations see this playing out over the years ahead, and to what degree this becomes a platform for us all to be able to provide a more integrated set of services that are more end-to-end funded, with the ambition of helping people live a better quality of life for as long as possible. So exciting times, and I do think that the COVID, and there's been a fair amount of reportage on this, so I'm not saying anything new. I do think the government has had a fantastic learning opportunity through COVID to see firsthand how combinations of empathetic, caring people, whether they be in social care or whether they be in our primary care, or whether they be in housing, where caring, empathetic people who are allied with technology and data-based insights are able to provide a better service, a more efficient service, a more inclusive service, and a better long-term outlook, both from a budgetary point of view, because interventions are made at a lower cost rather than when necessary at an emergency level fees of ambulances and ICU beds. So a big turning point, I think, for our industry and our sector, as these initial thoughts turn into more constructive and more concrete commitments from the government and the organisations that will depend upon it and embark upon it. Those were the main headlines that we wanted to cover. I've seen a lot of questions ping in, so looking forward to ploughing through some of those. Ian, do you want to take us back to full screen? We'll come off mute and off video discretion, and you can read the questions out to us, Ian.
Yeah, certainly. So I'll jump straight in from the top. So the first one is, we have a number of resident schemes with analog Tunstall pull cords. We would like to utilise these with a digital product. We don't need to talk about the external call centre as it's a 24-hour site, but can the digital bridge be used with Tunstall and send alerts to care staff's smartphones?
In principle, yes. Mark, you're formerly of that parish and some detailed background experience, but the simple answer, I think, is yes.
Yeah, although there's two pieces there. There's a piece about the pull cords and using those with a new digital system, which yes, you can. And then can the bridge send the calls elsewhere? Then yes, the bridge could send calls elsewhere. Principally, it's designed to get over the issues with analog protocols and the round trip delays, and unpacking those protocols and sending them onto a digital signal. That's what it's designed to do, to make sure that these failures don't occur. But could it send it somewhere else? Then yeah, absolutely.
We'd be happy to provide more details. So please, just if you haven't already, give us your contacts and we'll be in touch.
Brilliant. And the next question, actually relating to Digital Bridge, is ultimately, how does it work and how long is it going to be available for?
Okay, so Mark, it's something you can talk at length about, but as a high-level principle, it's a cloud-based service. It takes in an analog call signal and translates it through the intelligence that we've built there into a digital outbound signal. And as I mentioned earlier, nobody in the UK has got more experience of handling, processing, and building analog to digital capabilities than Appello have. We've handled, as I mentioned, millions of digital calls already. So, Mark, just unpack that a little bit more for the audience.
Yeah, so the issue that we have with the round trip delays is that essentially the signal becomes more and more distorted when it's coming through to the monitoring centre. So what we do is, we give the monitoring centre
on its way to the monitoring
centre.
It's reached the monitoring centre.
So what we do is we firstly we call a cloud service. So we reduce the amount of round trip delays. But most importantly, what happens normally in a monitoring centre is you have a very small board which is decoding protocols. What we have is a huge cloud service using lots of computing power to unpack those protocols. So we can add some checks and balances to stripping out those protocols, making sure we've got the right details and packing them into a digital packet. Once they're in a digital packet, we can send the data on its way without any fear across any form of network.
Very good. And the fundamental thing, as Mark has pointed out there, is that this is in the gap between leaving a service user and before it hits a monitoring center. So it doesn't matter whether it's ours or any other monitoring center, we are all suffering from hundreds and hundreds of thousands of calls every single month in the UK that are being delayed in being receipt at that monitoring center. And clearly that is a safety risk. How long will it be available? The service will be available until 2025. And we may extend it beyond that depending on customer demand. But what we want to be very clear that digital is a better, safer living experience, whether that's in singleton dwellings or in communal environments. And it's not in our interests or the interests of the service user to drag out that period any longer. The sooner people get across, the better and safer that is. But we recognise not everybody is in a position to have made the decision yet about how they are going to migrate to digital. And therefore, the Appello Digital Bridge is, as its name suggests, a bridge until you've made and embarked on that journey. Ian, next question.
Popular question, can we elaborate on Smart Connect utilising existing cabling?
Yeah, definitely. And Mark, I'll pass to you technically in a moment or two. This is something I wrestled with quite a bit before embarking on this, because fundamentally, new cabling is safer. Not only is it more future-proof because it's got more capacity, cabling in some sites has been there 10, 20, 30 plus years, and reusing it is of course more economic, but it's just fundamentally not as safe. And and as a point of principle, our starting point is always that a customer should replace their wiring. But we recognize that in some instances, for budgetary constraints and because of the nature of the property, that isn't always possible. So Mark, technically, do you want to say about what is required from a wiring perspective?
Yeah, so typically existing wiring in a bus type scenario, so in a Tunstall's High-Tech existing analog equipment, it's a 10-core cable. Typically 7 or 8 cores are used, and 2 cores are unused. They're used as spares. We will need a maximum of 6 cores, so we need 6 good cores to install the system, and that will give us a robust digital signaling right from the speech unit throughout the system, so it's still at 100% digital system, and then it will signal in the BS8521-2 now IP protocol using voice over IP through to the monitoring center.
Hopefully that answers the question, because from what you said, Ian, it sounds like a few people have asked something along that lines. But as with all of these questions, if there's more clarity you need, then just get in touch afterwards. You've got Ian's details from the invitation. Mine are relatively simple. It's tim.barclay@appello.co.uk. So ping us any questions that you want to follow up on if you feel we haven't fully answered them during this. Ian, they seem to be coming in faster than we're answering them, so we need to pick up a pace.
There's a few, definitely. Please, can we give examples of how we've reduced door/carer access?
Jill, that one is 100% in your sweet spot, so I'll hand you over to you for that.
Thank you. So our housing partners have looked at using particular codes on site, maybe using the trade codes, and also we've been working with next of kin on what they can do personally to support carers as well. But the main change was utilising trade codes on site.
It's also worth noting that one of the things we've learned about smart living solutions is that where we deployed it on a site where we previously monitored, we see a higher proportion of the resident answering the calls themselves because they feel so much happier and more confident being able to see who they're letting in because of the video door capability. So one of the things that you should consider as an organization, if you're particularly concerned about the volume of door traffic, is the degree to which you can help and encourage the residents to answer those themselves through video door entry or other technologies. Ian, next question.
Do we have plans to bring in health monitoring, or is this going to be via third-party integrations?
So the answer is yes, we've absolutely got plans to do it, and yes, that is going to be through third party largely. We already are interconnected with Apple Watch, with Fitbit. We are integrated with a number of medical grade devices. So from well-being through to genuine Bluetooth oximeters, blood pressure, and what else have we done? COPD monitoring, I think, as well. All of those, we've integrated a number of devices from third parties. The bit we see ourselves doing in the middle is deviation analysis. And for the next one of these sessions, we'll bring you some more details on our IO platform, which we have touched on before, which is that integration engine that takes inputs from various health and well-being monitors and gives a deviation analysis to try and indicate whether or not there's been a change in their living patterns. I'm having a wry smile to myself by that question because I told Ian to include a slide on this and he didn't think we had time for it, so I couldn't be feeling more smug at the moment.
Well, there's a lot of questions still to go. So does the equipment need to be hardwired or Wi-Fi covered? And what would you suggest works best for large schemes where Wi-Fi may drop out in certain areas?
We definitely do. We don't connect via Wi-Fi. We follow the British standards, and Mark, I don't know whether there's anything to say on this, but it's very simple. The British standards require hard powered and hard mounted, and that's what we do.
Brilliant. Are there different scenarios where you would recommend Smart Connect and Smart Living Solutions?
Yes, I suppose so. They come down to a couple of things. So firstly, they come down to your aspirations for your customers in the short, medium and longer term. And they come down to the contract as such that you have with your customers. So, if your contract with your customers mandates that you replace rather than upgrade, then I guess Smart Connect fits that bill. If your ambition is to take your customers on a journey of improving their living experience over years, then we would absolutely say Smart Living Solution is the direction of travel. So definitely different scenarios, but I think some of it will be budget driven, some of it will be driven by the contract that you have with your customers, as in residents, and some of it will be driven by the scenario that you find yourself in terms of the immediacy of needing to do it and the aspiration of what you want to deliver when digital transformation is complete. Do you want to just have what you had before but digital, or do you want to have something that really changes the game for a way a resident experiences living in that property? Hopefully that answers the question, but I suppose another example would be if it was a listed property or something where it was incredibly difficult to pull new wiring through and you felt really confident that the wiring was sufficiently reliable to have an emergency call system attached to it, then Smart Connect could be a solution in that environment.
So there's a question which is asking for a little bit of clarity. So it's just to, can they double check? Are we saying that Smart Connect can use existing analog wiring and call off-site in a digital end-to-end environment using Now IP 1.6 protocol? If so, can any other manufacturers do the same?
Well, I wouldn't speak for other manufacturers, although Mark has some background in the market and sitting on the standards board, so he may be able to give some guidance on that. Mark, first of all, can you first of all answer the question? What does it do? What was described?
Yes, absolutely. So it uses existing wiring. It uses an IP call on site and Now IP version 1.6 BS8521-2 offsite with voice over IP to the monitoring center. And it can go across open internet with strong TLS encryption as well. That's the first thing. The second thing is, do I know of any other manufacturer that does this? No, I don't. It's a swift answer. There may be that I'm unaware of right now, but it's relatively unlikely.
Thanks, Ian.
What do Appello offer in terms of dispersed alarms?
So we've got, and I mentioned this earlier on, we've got a partnership with Essence, which has been really fruitful in terms of bringing to the UK a advanced digitally capable dispersed alarm, which has some really strong USPs, in particular a voice extender. And it's one of the things that attracted us to this product was that if, and we see this all the time, Jill touched on no speech calls. If you have a resident or a service user who is in their bedroom and their speech unit is in their lounge, which is a pretty common scenario, there's a decent chance that they won't be heard. And in the instance of a no speech call, somebody is being, whether it's the ambulance services, where it's a next of kin, is going to be alerted to try and provide some type of feet on ground. Now, with a voice extender, you have the opportunity to be able to put one of those in further away rooms. So bedrooms, bathrooms would be two really common and good examples of where falls, slips, trips happen, and no speech calls are often registered from. So we're particularly enthused about what that does in terms of being able to provide a better, safer living experience for residents. Hopefully that answers the question. Ian?
Next question is in regards to the white paper. So a key responsibility for integrated care systems will be to support place-based joint working between NHS, local government, community and healthcare services and other partners. This will involve delegation of decision-making and budgets to the local area, which will generally fall into the local authority area. It feels like the impact will be minimal. What do you think?
Well, I'm not of the same opinion totally. Actually, I think if it's done well, the impact should be very, very significant. And you know, everybody's entitled to their own view on this, and it may be that I'm definitely in the glass half full. But if you think about social care interventions, they are typically, generally, either after an event or in the very close lead up to event. And I'm sure we've all heard of and seen of and know of scenarios where, had there been more well-being monitoring, discrete well-being monitoring, then it would be possible to have identified changes in living behaviour that could perhaps have been intervened and created a better outcome for the individual. An example I often give is, and it's based on quite personal experience with my mum, but when her carers used to turn up, they would often report the fact that she didn't want to get out of bed and that she didn't want to eat anything. And what, of course, they had no insight into was that my mum had gained an element of dementia over the years that we hadn't really properly understood. She was up pottering about between 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, made herself a couple of coffees, watched some not Homes Under the Hammer, what was her thing? Midsummer Murders, and then put herself to bed about 6 o'clock. Carer arrives at 7:30, and Pat's not up for it. And with some well-being monitoring, you'd be able to identify those and create better outcomes for the individual. So I genuinely think there is a really exciting future for a joined up, people-based, places-based, integrated connection between social care, housing, and primary care, where end-to-end budgets are considered, rather than primary care looking after theirs, social care looking after theirs, and housing looking after theirs. I don't suggest by any stretch of the imagination that this is easy territory. It is a long journey ahead of us, but we've already seen with devolved budgets in Manchester, in Torbay, that there are some really exciting proof points of how, when you do take a more end-to-end holistic view, that there are some great resident outcomes as a result. Hopefully that was not too long an answer, considering the amount of questions that we've still got. Keep going, Ian. And probably come off mute to help yourself.
Sorry about that. I'm going to group together a few Smart Connect related questions. So we have, how is Smart Connect powered? Does Smart Connect have built-in wireless connectivity for peripherals? And are there any prices available per unit? And is it similar to the Tunstall Smart Hub, but for a scheme setting?
Mark, I'll speak about pricing, and then Mark, I'll hand over to you to do the 1 minute on functionality. In terms of pricing, we've looked at the components, and they would seem to be in line with what you might find from other products which were available from Tunstall or Tyne-Tech. So I think you'll find that it would be broadly market competitive with those types of offerings. And we think the advantage it's got is it comes from somebody who's proven that they know how to deliver end-to-end digital calls at scale, with millions having been completed, versus others who are still, to some extent, trying to establish getting that end-to-end digital working. So that we'll say more about pricing when we finalize the last bits of the specification and design, but as a guide, as a guide range, that's where you should be thinking about. And Mark, in terms of those technical questions?
So in terms of power, it has its own power supply, or it has dual power supplies. It also has dual servers, has 24-hour battery backup. In terms of radio, it supports 869 standard 869 radio triggers. So class 1 radio triggers. We have pendants. We also support all of the care peripherals. And moving forward, we will expand that peripheral range to support other manufacturers.
Good, that's really helpful.
And on the theme of Smart Connect, we have a Tunstall system. So if we were to change to Appello Smart Connect, do we have to change our existing Tunstall 869 telecare devices, or does the new digital system give interoperability? It
will give interoperability immediately when it's released. It won't give interoperability with those peripherals, but moving forward, we hope it will, yes.
Still work in progress on that.
Yeah.
Ian?
What geographical areas do you cover, and how is performance around servicing, repair and fault issues?
So we supply services nationally, and we use a physical maintainer who's got a national presence to make sure that we stick within our service commitments, and depends what type of service package you buy, but the usual range of 4-hour, 24-hour are available for physical maintenance. In parallel with that, one of the unique things about Smart Living Solutions is that it has remote digital diagnostic capabilities. So it heartbeats every few seconds to let us know that the devices are all connected and all working, which is a world away from the current environment of analog systems that are out there, where you have no idea, and that's why test calls are so important. In terms of the heartbeat, if a error code is reported, then we've got a digital triage team who will identify whether a remote or a physical visit is required. So hopefully that answers the question, but again, more details available. Just drop us a note.
Can our equipment be used in an extra care setting?
Simple answer to that is yes. In the interest of time, let's keep going. If you want more details, then get in touch. But yes, 100% in an extra care setting, very compatible.
Can Smart Connect report to a non-Appello ARC?
Provided that ARC is capable of receiving now IP version 1 point whatever Mark said earlier, absolutely. I think what a number of monitoring centres are finding is that irrespective of what type of digital capability they thought they had, it's still needing to be proven and tested. But fundamentally, if they have digital protocols working and tested, then yes, it can interconnect to an alternative monitoring centre.
And we have tested with John Tech, and we can connect with the John Tech platform right now.
Great stuff. And I know you're working with other platforms.
Yes, yeah, we're also working with the UMO platform.
How does Digital Bridge meet trusted requirements in the new IP standard? Can we apply local certificates for trust across the network?
Mark, that one's absolutely in your sweet spot and definitely not in mine.
So this is a cloud service, so the certificate's going to be applied at the cloud level, not at a local level. Now, you could apply them at a local level, but if whoever asks that, if you want to drop me a note, and then I'm really happy to have a chat with it, because everyone else on this is going to go to sleep.
And on the subject of Digital Bridge, can Digital Bridge support ARC to scheme pathways? Not quite sure what that means.
ARC to scheme pathways.
I think what that means is, can I call out from the ARC to the scheme? Yes, absolutely. And it also means that it may mean, could we go the other way from from digital to analog? Which yes, we can. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. And one probably for everybody on the panel. You briefly mentioned that you released CareNet to customers. How does it differ to other platforms?
So I think that I will pass over to Mark from a technical point of view, and then Jill from an operational point of view. Mark?
So a couple of big things for me. The first thing is CareNet is a digital platform with an analog gateway. Doesn't mean it can't handle analog calls. It handles it very well. But all the platforms, social alarm platforms on the market today, are analog platforms with a digital gateway. What it means for us is it's very easy to expand that digital compatibility and availability and do a lot more with the platform, because it was designed to do that in the first place. The second big piece for me is it is a SaaS only or a cloud only platform. It is delivered from a multi-million-pound data center. The problems that we're seeing with digital connectivity, especially with alarm receiving centers, is local IT requirements and security requirements to defend and to prepare for digital calls to be received by the monitoring center. All of that goes out the window when you have a cloud-based service, because all of that is managed by a data center and effectively managed by professionals whose job it is to defend and to deliver cloud services. So we don't have to worry about any of that in the future. And that's how we consume the platform, as a cloud service.
And Jill, from an operator's perspective, how does CareNet differ versus other platforms?
So from the operator's perspective in Appello, the operators have been involved in actually developing the front end of the call handling platform. Simple things like moving the mouse from one place to another to reduce the amount of time to manage that call has all been built into the platform. The speech is very clear. It is digits like talking on a telephone. That doesn't take away from the fact that you've still got press to speak and listen on analog calls. However, the speech path is really super clear. It also looks like Outlook. So when our younger members of staff that have come out of university, etc., and school, it looks very much like what they've been taught at school. So it's very familiar to them. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to navigate. So in essence, it's scalable as well. So we can take on large numbers of connections should we need to when we've got the opportunity to. So it's very scalable. When I think back to the days before we had CareNet, we had to archive off hundreds of calls once a week onto tapes, and then if, God forbid if we got asked for a voice recording, because we had to go hoofing through hundreds of calls to find it. So every call now is actually in the resident record. So every resident's calls are associated to their record. So it's really easy to find, date and time stamped, etc. So it's all been developed to be extremely usable and extremely easy and simple for an operator to navigate.
Ian, conscious that we're over time and a couple of questions left.
Yeah, I'll just add to that last one though, actually, quickly, that we've just put up a case study today on the use of CareNet with one of our customers on our website in the blog section. So yeah, take a look at our website and there's a bit of a live case study. In terms of questions, just going back on that previous one about the digital bridge. So they meant, as an operator, can I still ring into a scheme via digital bridge and continue doing equipment controls like offsite and on-site functions?
Yes, absolutely. And opening doors and safes and everything else. Yes, you can.
Brilliant. Do we have any operators, call center staff working from home at present?
Yeah.
Yes, so through the pandemic, we've probably had a 70-30 split of 70% of staff working from home on certain days, on certain shifts. We're probably looking at more 50-50-ish now, but it's worked extremely well for us, the work from home solution through the CareNet platform.
Brilliant.
We actually track performance in the home and in the office so that we can see on an operator by operator basis what productivity looks like, to make sure that we feel confident that this is still in line with the expectations we'd want to be delivering for our customers.
Jill,
Yeah.
Question for you is, as a monitoring customer, would I have access to call history and call recordings?
You'd have access to call history, but not call recordings because of GDPR. All call recordings would have to be requested through normal processes, but you would see call history, you'd see the time the call landed, you would be able to see how long it waited in the queue, etc., etc. You'd see call notes, but you wouldn't get the call voice recordings.
Brilliant. And our last question.
Just to clarify that, when we're talking about GDPR, that's because our operator,
correct,
we need their consent to be able to hand over a record, and in almost every, well, I think in every instance we've ever had that, it's been granted, but that's why it's not part of the app without their consent.
And our last question is, do we have a time frame for when Smart Connect will be available?
The summertime. So the summer is quite a wide range, isn't it? But I fancy our chances of getting it out about the same time that we come out of lockdown. Now, for people on the call, that could be June the 21st, or it could be a bit later than that. But we're targeting July of this year.
Brilliant. That is all of the questions.
Fantastic. Well, folks, I take it from the fact that there were so many, you either found us really useless presenters who didn't cover the salient points that you were looking for, or you found it genuinely a good use of your time. And the fact that so many of you stayed on right until this point suggests that hopefully it was the latter. We'd love to know what you'd like to hear in our next update, and if there's anything you want to know about, particularly with any sense of timeliness, then of course we're happy to have a bilateral in the meantime. Thank you very, very much for your time and attendance. Thank you for those of you who are customers for your business. We genuinely appreciate it, and we want to, and I hope you got a sense of that, we want to keep developing our products and our services to make yours and your customers' experience of working with us even better. And for those who are not yet customers, hopefully you heard some things today that were genuinely appealing, and you are interested enough to find out some more. So either way, thank you very much for your time and attention. Really, really appreciate it, and look forward to speaking soon.